Welcome to the Explainer. You know what's honestly kind of wild? You can be loud, funny, super smart, and just totally at ease talking for hours with your friends. But the literal second a camera turns on, it's like something fundamental just snaps. That natural charisma you just had, completely gone. Poof. So today, we're diving into the psychology of the camera lens and unpacking this deeply relatable mystery of why incredibly intelligent, self-aware people completely freeze up the moment they hit record. Let's get right into it.
It's such a frustrating experience, right? And so many of us share it. You're totally confident right up until the exact microsecond that little lens points your way. Suddenly, saying the most basic sentence in the English language feels impossible. You just want to say, "Hey guys, welcome back." But somehow, out of nowhere, you sound like you're making a hostage tape. And look, if you've ever recorded the exact same 5-second clip 37 times, only to delete every single one because you hated how you looked, you really need to know this isn't just you being casually camera shy.
Because what's actually happening to you in that moment is highly physical, and it is completely involuntary. Just look at this immediate shift. Your throat literally tightens up, your face suddenly feels like it's made of plastic, your hands completely forget what they're supposed to be doing, like have I always had hands, and your authentic voice just vanishes. A lot of people assume confidence is just this automatic trait, right? Like some people are naturally comfortable being seen and the rest of us just aren't. But psychology actually tells a completely different story about what your body is doing in these moments.
So that brings us to the big question. Why does a tiny, simple piece of glass and plastic cause so much internal panic? I mean, it's just a camera, right? Well, not to your brain. See, your brain does something very, very specific when it realizes it's being watched. To really get this, we have to look past the surface level awkwardness and dig right down into the evolutionary psychology that governs how our minds actually work. Here's the thing. The moment a camera points at you, your nervous system entirely stops treating the situation like a casual chat. Instead, it throws you right into a high-stakes state of evaluation. To your brain, the camera equals a permanent record of you being evaluated. As humans, we are incredibly, deeply sensitive to being judged. So when that lens opens up, your body reacts as if something incredibly important is suddenly on the line.
And honestly, if we look back at our evolutionary timeline, this fear makes total sense. Think about it. Thousands of years ago, being rejected by your tribe wasn't just embarrassing, it was a literal death sentence. Isolation meant you were physically vulnerable. No tribe meant no protection. So today, in the present moment, a camera lens is actually triggering that exact ancient fear of being perceived and potentially rejected by the group. But looking to the future, it's kind of worse now. Recordings mean permanent perception. You're not just being watched once by one person, you can be paused, replayed, commented on, and judged basically forever. Because your brain subconsciously understands this high-stakes permanence, your self-awareness just absolutely skyrockets. Psychologists actually have a name for this: self-focused attention. It's a psychological state where excessive self-monitoring from the outside totally destroys your natural, authentic behavior. So instead of just talking naturally, your brain is frantically running a checklist. Wait, how do I sound? Why is my smile doing that? Do I always blink this much? And the exact second that extreme self-monitoring kicks in, your natural authenticity is completely gone.
And this sets off a brutal, continuous feedback loop that traps so many of us. We call it the awkwardness spiral. It goes like this. First, you feel a little bit awkward on camera. Second, because you feel awkward, you start consciously monitoring your own behavior. Third, that intense over-monitoring actually makes you look even more unnatural. And fourth, seeing yourself look unnatural spikes your anxiety, which forces you to monitor yourself even harder. It's a trap. Before you know it, you are completely stuck inside your own head while you're just trying to get through one simple sentence.
This vicious cycle builds into what we call the psychological mirror. And the really fascinating part, most people who freeze on camera aren't actually shy people in real life. In fact, they're often highly self-aware, emotionally intelligent, deep thinkers. But cameras create this intense psychological mirror. Video forces you to objectively confront your own facial expressions, the sound of your voice, your weird little pauses. You suddenly become acutely, painfully aware of this deeply uncomfortable gap between how you feel internally and how you're actually coming across externally. Add social media into the mix, and this becomes infinitely more difficult. Cameras used to just capture memories, right? Now they capture identity. Just look at the modern pressures we're dealing with today. We're expected to build these flawless personas, create personal brands, project perfectly polished personalities, and craft entire digital versions of ourselves.
Subconsciously, we start buying into this idea that every single video we record has to be absolutely perfect. Perfect lighting, perfect delivery, perfect energy. It is exhausting.
So here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. Perfectionism destroys natural charisma. It really does. Because charisma isn't about being perfect. Charisma is about presence. And true presence disappears the exact second you become obsessed with avoiding mistakes. You can literally watch this happen to people in real time. Someone starts talking, and halfway through, their entire personality just vanishes because they are trying so desperately to be flawless. Which leads us to a pretty massive realization. We really have to step back and ask, are you actually afraid of cameras, or are you just afraid of visibility? There is a huge difference there. Visibility can completely change your life, but once people actually notice you, they form opinions about you. And opinions are emotionally impossible to control. For highly sensitive people, that lack of control feels terrifying. Being perceived actually feels psychologically unsafe because it opens the door to all those uncontrollable opinions. And hey, that fear is incredibly valid on a purely biological level. Neuroscience has actually shown that social rejection registers in the brain incredibly similarly to physical pain. Your brain genuinely treats public embarrassment like a physical threat. Think about it. Maybe you were laughed at in class as a kid, or mocked for the way you spoke. Those small moments are emotionally powerful. Fast forward years later, and a simple camera can inadvertently reactivate those exact same old emotional wounds. It makes the simple act of hitting record feel like a literal physical threat. Because of that threat response, we fall into one of the most dangerous psychological traps you will ever encounter. Relief reinforces avoidance. Think about it. If recording a video makes you anxious and then you avoid recording, that anxiety suddenly disappears, right? Well, you've just accidentally trained your brain that hiding was the correct survival choice. Every single time you tell yourself, I'll just start next week, your nervous system quietly notes, good decision, that kept us safe. And so the fear just keeps growing in the background. And that unchecked fear leads directly to what we playfully call procrastination wearing expensive clothes. This is when people let fear completely dictate their actions, but they disguise it as prep work. You know the drill: over-preparing scripts, overthinking every single minor detail, watching endless online tutorials instead of actually hitting record, or my absolute personal favorite, buying more and more expensive equipment instead of just practicing. It's basically using research and gear as a highly disguised form of hiding, just waiting around to feel perfectly confident before you start. But here is the reality check that completely changes the game. Confidence is not the prerequisite, it's the reward. Most people wait around to feel confident before starting, which means, tragically, they never start. Listen, nobody looks natural at the beginning. Literally nobody. Every single creator or speaker you admire today started out with flat energy, super weird pauses, and totally forced smiles. Confidence only shows up after you do the awkward, uncomfortable work. So, what's the actual solution here? It's simple. Repetition teaches safety. The goal isn't to magically wake up fearless tomorrow morning. That's totally unrealistic. The goal is simply to convince your nervous system that you aren't dying. And the only way to do that is to repeatedly expose yourself to the camera. Do it enough, and eventually your brain figures out that awkwardness isn't fatal. The camera stops feeling like this instrument of permanent judgment and starts feeling like what it actually is: a conversation. When you make that shift, you'll start to notice a night and day difference in how you present yourself. Just look at performance mode versus expression mode. Performance mode is secretly begging, please, please don't judge me. It's exhausting, it's tense, and it always feels forced. But expression mode simply offers, hey, let me share something with you. It is magnetic, it's honest, and it leaves room for genuine connection. And trust me, audiences can feel that difference instantly. Always remember this: humans trust humanity, not perfection. Some of the absolutely most powerful moments on camera happen the exact second someone finally stops trying to sound impressive. Audiences actually crave those awkward laughs. They love the slight imperfections. They connect deeply with those moments where you kind of lose your train of thought, because all of those things signal real, genuine human connection. The world doesn't connect with flawless robots. It connects with real, messy, authentic people. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. If you've spent years hiding away because you honestly thought you needed to achieve perfection before being visible, your silence was probably just protecting your fear. What if your first imperfect recording isn't proof that you're bad at this, but actual proof that you're finally allowing yourself to be seen? It takes immense, incredible courage to stop hiding. The camera was never really the problem. The fear of being perceived was. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and seriously, I challenge you to go hit record today.